right, why don't we go ahead and get started? I have been before accused of being on marketing time, which is apparently a little slower than everybody else's time. Welcome again. For those of you who didn't hear before, we're here today to talk about working with centers of influence. And most of you know me, I'm Stefanie Altman. I'm the VP of Marketing at Agency Revolution. I'm running out of baseball and hot dog jokes to tell you guys, but mustard for the win every time. And I'm joined today by Jason.
Jason Walker, president of Agency Revolution. Glad to be asked to participate in this webinar, especially to talk about centers of influence. This is the authentic moment for me. I was asked for a picture that wasn't the stodgy headshot. So that is my 5-year-old puppy. I still refer to him as a puppy because he acts like it each and every day. Oliver. He's a mix between a German Shepherd and not sure what the other one is, but I like to think it's probably a lab or retriever, something with that soft look on his face. But excited to have this discussion with independent agencies, talk about centers of influence, especially in a time where we're still facing a hard market and there are plenty of opportunities to help expand and grow wallet share and book of business by leveraging centers of influence. So thanks, Stefanie, for having me. Look forward to having this discussion.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Jason. And oh, what a good boy. I think we should just make all dog pictures from now on.
It usually just softens every mood, no matter what what you feel. Once you walk in and you see a picture of a dog, it helps. I'm a believer.
I mean, maybe next webinar idea is how to bring your dog into your marketing, right?
Yes.
So we figured, today you hear the term center of influence or COI, and we were actually laughing about that here because I kept talking about COIs for this, and that can mean about 7 different things. So when we talk about COIs later on as we speak today, we're talking about centers of influence. So that is someone who works with or around or is well connected as well to the types of people or businesses that you'd like to work with. And they'll support you in many ways. They will boost your credibility. They will help you increase your own network, potentially deepen relationships even with your own clients. And really that sets you up for future growth. So investing in relationships with centers of influence today, it's not just a strategy for quickly building your network, which it will, but it's kind of like the snowball rolling down the hill.
And I was the one that was the culprit. I go straight to the insurance mind of certificates of insurance. So if I say that while we're presenting, know that I too am talking about centers of influence today.
So, who as insurance agents or even potentially some insurance agents, COIs who joined us today, who we're thinking about seeking out, right? Like that's where we'll start. And Jason, one of the reasons that I asked you to join us today is because you had done some consulting with a number of agencies prior to joining Agency Revolution. Figured you might have some good perspective on, where some of these COIs might be found in an agent's kind of everyday life.
Yeah, I know that when we're working with agencies all across the country, referrals is the first thing that comes off the tongue. Even when our growth team is calling out to independent agencies and talking about solutions that can help them build their book of business, one of the first pieces of feedback we'll get is, I'm actually fine. I have enough referrals pouring in that honestly can sustain me and help me grow into the future. And we always want to make sure that we tip our hat to, when we're thinking about centers of influence, of course, your referral partners that you have that are bringing in business on your behalf, or at least giving you a shot, whether it's on the personal lines or commercial line side. And then agencies will go into discussions about, listen, I'm involved with a lot of different local organizations, and I want to figure out how to more and more monetize that, because it's great to make sure that you're charitable, but in the same event, you want to make sure that if you're out there speaking within these local organizations, some people will be like, well, my Better Business Bureau, or maybe I have an affiliation or affinity for some of the high school sports programs. How do I ultimately get myself in front of my customer base leveraging these centers of influence. Anything that's within the neighborhood itself, or if you're a multi-location agency that stretches yourself nationally, you're probably expanding that network that you have. And that was one big focus when I was just out there helping consult agencies, was the network effect. And the conversation was, if you think about whether you're heavy in personal lines, commercial lines, or have a nice book split, you have your existing customer base, but they all have influences outside of themselves. And how do you start to get into those groups? So when you think about on the commercial line side, businesses are obviously participating with their centers of influence. And even if you're not directly connected, making that connection through that existing customer opens up a world of opportunity. And so just to kind of cap that off, Stefanie, as a consultant, that was a big opportunity within the existing book, which matters, I think, more now more than ever, because as we talk about hard markets and trying to expand your book of business, it's less about, in many cases, new leads and growth that way. It's more about, how do I start to mine within my existing customer base and reach out through these groups, through these organizations, through my neighborhoods, through my network, and ultimately bring in some new prospects and customers that way.
And it's really interesting to look at some of the statistics about referral business as well. And I would say anytime you're working with a center of influence, that really is ultimately referral business for both of you, not necessarily just the one-on-one referral, but people spend generally about 25% more, and that's cross industry, but holds true in terms of product depth for their insurance. 25% more if they've been referred versus if they've come in organically. People tend to take recommendations. They find them, to be kind of, they say 18 to 35%, depending on what study you mean, more trustworthy, more just more honest than advertising or even testimonials from people that they don't know. And the other thing I would add as well with local organizations, think about the things that like you're doing for yourself. I met my realtor through a connection from my gym, and she is the one who introduced me to the IA that I work with now. So just think about where you're going every day as well. So we've talked about some of these already, but just kind of getting specific about who is around you that can be a really effective center of influence. Financial advisors, I just mentioned my realtor, CPAs, attorneys, mortgage lenders, the other personal or private bankers, your community bankers, other business owners. Most of you as IAs, you are small business owners or involved in a small business as well. Talk to your peers. Business bankers and treasury officers. And this is one that I like to call out because when I worked in business and commercial banking, one of the first things we would tell anyone when they bought a new product was, okay, but what about like cyber insurance and business insurance? So they can be a great lead for you. Then there's any other service providers or consultants, because you are a consultant to your clients. And then other insurance providers, and where things get specific, for example, life insurance or jewelry. Jason, what do you think about those? Who do you think is the untapped possibility here?
I'd like to build a little bit on the life piece. So I know from a carrier's perspective, those that offer life insurance to their customer base are trying to figure out ways that independent agencies can help distribute that product down to the consumer. And so on the flip side of that, as agencies, and you have a healthy personal lines book, for instance, or even on the commercial line side, trying to introduce new products to each one of those employees, life insurance often comes up. And so a big push that we've seen with our customers that are using our website programs, as well as our marketing automation programs, are starting to create specific niche audience targets and going after, in this case, potential life insurance customers. And so that obviously helps the carrier relationship that you have, because they have life and annuity products that they want to be able to distribute. And then from your perspective, you're demonstrating to your customer base that you're rounding out that book of business to create that trust, to create that lifetime value. And so from the website marketing automation and tying those pieces together if you have campaigns running out to existing customers, telling them about the importance of life insurance, and then ultimately landing them on particular pages within the website that speak to that, and then forms that are ultimately drawing data back from the customer that you can take and push back to that management system. Now you're creating an ecosystem around some of these centers of influence. And just think about that same process. Great, I did that for life insurance. Now let me go after those personal lines customers where jewelry insurance might make sense, especially that engagement ring, which we know is a pretty lofty expense within the household. And then a last piece I'll say is one of our big focus areas is on that financial advisor side. So we at Agency Revolution, our parent company is FMG, which is the leading digital marketer from a technology perspective and services to financial advisors. And we're seeing a lot of cross-pollination there. And it kind of goes back to the whole life and annuity space, and just seeing these two groups come together, advisors on one side, insurance agencies on the other, and continuing to feed business back and forth. From a personal perspective, I know my advisor is always making sure that I'm in tune with also the policies I might need and making recommendations into the groups that I need to go to that aren't them. And so building those networks, creating this digitized space, constant communication going out, you can honestly just keep checking the box off of each one of these partners and having good landing environments for them, because that builds trust and credibility when they want to refer business into your channel. So this is obviously a nice listing of those that might be able to influence your business, but to think about it in terms of how do I start to create some of that content in those spaces where if I'm going to go after community banks, I want to tell them I've got a home for you digitally where you can start sending some of your banking customers my way. And that's where you start to really create power within your wherewithal, the means that you have from a technology perspective.
Jason, I love that you brought up the marketing content side of it, because that is something that, I mean, I know whenever I'm out there and talking to people, they find so overwhelming, but it's so important. And that's where, I'll do a little plug for us, I guess, here, where it's easy to kind of stand up that page if you're working with the right partner. And just, knowing that standing up that page is so critical, because if you're working with someone and they are going to be referring business to you, you want to know that, like, they want to know that they're referring it to someone who is really putting their best face forward, their best foot forward, and is showcasing the excellent service that the shared client then will be able to expect. So that is just something to think about, that it is extremely important, but it's not scary, and it doesn't have to be a huge lift. So we've already started to go down this path. We'll continue, because they really can be a cornerstone of success. We both mentioned it. It's a hard market right now. Things are tough. So how do you double down on the clients that you have, but start to understand kind of who could be next in your pipeline? And this is one thing where we originally weren't going to go this route, I'll be honest, but Jason and I started talking, and we realized that everywhere you go, you see, kind of influence marketing. And that is center of influence, just on a much broader scale, right? Anyone who's booked a flight lately, or a hotel, Airbnb, bought a ticket for something, you see that. Do you want to protect, your purchase? Embedded insurance is in many ways a bit of partner marketing, people sharing their influence. If you're a old millennial like me, and you're on Instagram, you're constantly seeing these partnerships, right? There's others where local businesses, for example, are trying to partner with other local businesses. You kind of can't you can't look at anything online now without seeing some of these opportunities where the idea of partnership for influence has merged together.
And I want to, I think that, the term embedded insurance obviously started a bit more on the enterprise side, and these are great representations of that. Whether it's in industry or outside of the industry, there are those two channels trying to come together to feed off of each other. And then I'm thinking to myself, Okay, so from an independent agency's perspective, what's something that you could do or go after today? I several years ago was running a web-based company, and I had a client who had built a complete secondary. We weren't even responsible for this, so I'm just using an example because I thought it was such a cool proposition. So what they did as an insurance agency was they said, you know what, we want to go after a lot of these property development firms that have apartment space in and around, and it happened to be in the state that I'm in Ohio, but then I think started to spread a little bit as they grew within the organization. And what they wanted to do was to create an experience that they could then go to each property development firm and say, hey, if you want, you can send each new tenant or those that have to search for insurance to this particular landing experience that is just around renters. And obviously, this is small when you think about each individual policy. But when you look at it as a whole, going after the property manager, now you have an income stream that ultimately becomes the push of a button from the consumer that's in the experience of those local groups that are in and around you. And then as that continues to broaden, or you go into multiple states as an agency, you can just expand that experience. And in essence, that's what they created. It was an embedded experience through the property manager that ultimately had the consumer coming into the agency's portal. And really, it was unbeknownst. It had more of like a national feel to it, that this was a place that you come and fill out information. It's just the insurance agency behind the scenes was the one fielding all the business and servicing the business. And so it is something that is not just relegated to carriers and enterprises and those types of groups. It is, how could you potentially take something that's within your ecosystem today, landing pages that no one can find because you can do those quick no follows to the search engines, and then run some kind of marketing campaign behind it, and then start going out to these groups and saying, I've created the experience for you. I have embedded insurance to offer you as an independent agency. And we've seen success there, whether or not we're the ones who created it.
I love that example. And I think that, it really kind of shows the way that the insurance industry learned from other things going on around it. I was telling Jason yesterday that the first mortgage I ever got was from a bank here in Ohio that had a pretty substantial insurance division. And when, we were talking about kind of like closing paperwork, they basically said, oh, by the way, we took the liberty of like running through, all your insurance here if you're interested in this. And it was like just one more paper to sign. Sure, I was signed up. It was right there. Um, and there's also things that you, as independent agents, can think about in terms of partnering with your local businesses, like we mentioned as well, and really have success at the other end of the tactic than what Jason was talking about. It all depends on what's right for you. If say someone has, signs up, they're a new client, they get a new policy with you, or even just, adds a new line, you could do a referral to a local business. There's kind of something going on in my neighborhood in Ohio, where I recently registered with a local business, and they sent me a $30 gift card to go use at one of 4 other ones. So those little networks really can matter. And you can do it on the really kind of enterprise level seeming scale, or really keep it close to home.
Good point.
And this is kind of let's bring it all together, what we were just talking about. Jason brought in some really great kind of national examples. Just apply those lessons to what's going on there. We see it with that embedded insurance. What Jason shared is a perfect example of taking the lessons from the big guys and bringing it to an independent agent level. It's also thinking, who do you already know? Who are you already working with? And what's the win-win for the two of you to strengthen that relationship, to think about something that could be a little bit more of a, use it again, embedded sort of partnership. And then you think about, once you go from there, you have the chance to share exposure to potentially new pockets of your audience. And that's, a great thing about working with centers of influence. And knowledge share, right? They might be using a channel that you haven't thought of, or working through a channel that perhaps you tried a few years ago and didn't find as much success with, but now they're taking a slightly different tactic. So much of this is not just sharing your client lists, basically, but it's helping each other to level up by using that shared knowledge. So the nuts and bolts, right? We all want to start or grow our, lines of business, right? So how do we think about this then to really expand what we're already doing? So I kind of took the first line on this thinking about commercial lines, because in a hard market, commercial lines are a little more resilient. And you're a business, you partner with your business partners, and you all kind of know what's going on with business because you're doing it. I wanted to share that you've got shared affiliations that you can draw on to think about who else has those shared affiliations. This is a little ad that was run in the newsletter of an organization that I'm part of, and it's for a local business who points out, hey, come work with us because you already know all these people who are involved with us, right? The other thing too is just understanding the challenges. Like, yes, the hard market absolutely is creating some unique challenges for IAs, but working through down cycles is something that your COI friends have done in their own lines of business and might be able to, again, do some of that knowledge share for support.
Yeah, and on the personal lines, I'll just kind of add a note here, something that Agency Revolution is doing, and it all plays back into what we're hearing from agencies. So agencies are telling us that the operational needs have increased. The reason why is because the amount of questions coming back in, whether it's through phone calls, text, no matter the communication, there's this question of, why are rates going up? Why is this taking place to me? Why am I being remarketed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's creating this influx of work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to drive growth out of that work. It just means you might be retaining, which is good for the business. So then the concept or thought came up, are there ways to start adding new growth channels, whether it's commercial lines or personal lines, on behalf of independent agencies? And think about groups, companies, whatever, that are just on the periphery of insurance, but really want to market to your consumer base and want to be able to share whatever is picked up on that end from a transactional perspective with you. And so one of the places that we're pushing hard as Agency Revolution is figuring out which partnerships we can start to build on behalf of independent agencies. One of them recently is Cinch Home Services, which is a warranty company. And the whole point of view there is that with every homeowner, they are a candidate for home warranties, and some will opt into that, some will not. But from the perspective of opening up that channel and creating a space for companies to market with you and on your behalf, periphery type solutions, in this case, home warranties, to the homeowner base, because you just pull that data back and forth, understanding that segment from your agency management system. Now, not only are they a home insurance customer, but then a pending warranties where you share in that revenue. And that has us expanding that thought process. There are particular devices that are being put in homes or in automobiles that are third party, and their biggest need is to be able to work with you to get in front of more consumers. And they're willing to do that through rev share models, and they need to be able to market their materials with your permission. And so what we're doing is figuring out new opportunities or avenues to create additional revenue on behalf of the independent agency, which also does good by fostering the relationships with your existing customer base, as well as helps you grow, hopefully, new opportunities. And so it's that type of thinking that we're also asking the audience here to consider. What may be local home alarm systems, for instance, and I know some are local, regional, national, but there might be specific groups that you could say, listen, if you want to partner with me and market through me, and I've got sophisticated ways to do that and get that content in front of my existing homeowners, policyholders, I'd be willing to do that in exchange for whatever you work out with that particular group. that's a big opportunity because we know that the IoT space just continues to grow, the Internet of Things, lots of different devices coming into the space and or coverages and or you can just keep naming what that list becomes. And so how do you start to monetize some of those opportunities while making sure that you are the insurance agency of record? And so these are just some ways that we want to bring that thought process to you, and also know that, you know, if you're working with Agency Revolution, we're trying to build some of those relationships in concert with you. But those opportunities exist for you as well. You can go out and create some of those. We just wanted to bring one as an example, just so you understand how you start to branch out and your centers of influence grow.
And Jason, to, piggyback on that, I get that this all sounds like very big. Like I'm adding all of these new COIs, I'm adding all these new referral sources, I'm adding this new content, and I'm not the expert, or I don't really know how I'm going to manage all of this, or how do I make sure that I'm talking to the people that my attorney COI referred to differently than the CPA COI versus the folks who are coming in through the home warranty channel. And that's where just having the right marketing technology around makes a big difference. You can bring them in on separate pages, for example, on Forge, and kind of send them there. And then you can manage those campaigns pretty seamlessly with very low effort through Fuse, if that's the, direction you choose to go. And obviously hope you would work with Agency Revolution on that. But any way that you do think about it, thinking about that segmentation and talking to those people in their specific way is something worth considering. And just know that there are very low effort ways to do that. Everyone wants to feel heard, like, and as much as it seems fishy sometimes, like, oh, I'm being so targeted, we're used to that now. And your clients are used to getting messaging that feels specific enough to them. And as you go through these COI relationships, the shared relationship is actually kind of a unique segment of its own.
I wanted to know, we usually don't, we'll try to make sure we hit all questions and things, but I love the comment, Brad, you made that captive insurance agents have become some of my best COIs. That is an interesting revelation and something that's captured on screen here, but I appreciate that feedback that you're providing, and I wasn't even thinking about that. And as we get to kind of the Q&A, if there are specific examples you want to provide, it's just a really interesting development.
Jason, we see your question there. I promise we will address that as we get to a Q&A at the end. And maybe this will answer some of it, but ways to approach COIs, and really thinking now about retention and credibility, because if they're a trusted advisor to whoever they're working with, that's going to lend some credibility to you if you are their recommended partner. First, let's not forget you're a COI to them. These should be win-win relationships, especially if you're in a setting up where you really can create some of that very personal feeling communication and really help people feel valued. This is great for everybody. The one thing that I would kind of say here is you are all using great websites. You have this wonderful presence. You are kind of in your community. As people are coming to you, just make sure that they kind of have that same professional, kind of professional front on them, that they also have a nice website, that they also are kind of involved in the same things. Shared values matter. Authenticity is one of the things that is cited as most important in terms of marketing these days. There was a recent study that shows that I actually, in the last 20 years, has jumped up the most in terms of what people are looking for. So keep that in mind here. But again, really just thinking about that win-win and the excellent service that each of you can provide. We talked a little bit at the beginning, like this is not a linear growth. As you are growing your network, the opportunities are going to become more and more. It's, the greater you go out, the more people you can possibly touch. And then just think about like, you're in a particular position of demand. Like, people are going to want to work with you. People always need insurance at any given point. It's not just necessarily something at a certain time of year. It's not just at a certain point in their lives. You're a constant. And with that too, like you have best practices that you can share. And some of that might be make sure you have a great website, think about some, segmentation, and marketing, automation, things like that. Just, but also know, your partners may have their own thing.
You know what, Stephanie, I was just thinking as you were going through each one of these points, reputation management and
Mhm.
the ability to be able to track that ongoing. That says a lot about your agency. And we all know there's customer satisfaction scores, there's customer engagement scores, there's net promoter scores. Like we are force fed, I think, this information at this point that you better track it and report it back. And there's truth to that regardless of what someone's trying to sell you. There is truth to the fact that keep your loyalty scores front and center so that people understand that you are a credible source. Because as you're going out there trying to gain your centers of influence or you're trying to support and retain them, you want to be able to say, this is what my customers, this is what my partners are saying about me. And it's just a running list. It's tracked. You store it somewhere that's publicly available, whether that's on your social pages, allow those reviews to come through, whether that's on your website. I know we at Agency Revolution, we are making sure as a best practice that agencies that are running marketing automation through Fuse, that as part of those campaigns, there is always a point or moment in time where we're taking back some kind of satisfaction survey from the customers through our agencies. And that way the agencies can start to build that influence that they have, those positive results. Because I will say that it seems that insurance agencies working with their customers have some of the highest, most solid reputation scores when you compare markets. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it is not just transactional business. It heavily relies on the human. So in all of these ways that we are articulating, make sure that you're front and center. What better way to have that than numerical objective data that you can put in front of anybody and say, I am the professional, let's have more business running through. And to Stephanie's point, make sure they reciprocate too. You can ask for those particular scores. If they're not keeping them, that's a judgment play for you, but it's a way for you to know that they're as sound as you are because you're representing it every day.
Yep. I will, if that's something you find interesting, on our website, we did do a webinar about the importance of collecting that data a few weeks ago. So I would invite everyone to, in your spare time, go check that out. You can really kind of hear some examples from some agencies and then see exactly how it works through our systems. The only caveat I'll say that Jason pointed out, agents have incredibly high NPS scores. Like I'd say in the 60s and 70s is not unheard of. That is unheard of in most industries. So if your lawyer friends is a little bit lower, maybe just go look at some of their verbatims, because I'm guessing, and I say this, my partner is a lawyer, so I'm making fun of someone within the household. They might not have quite as high a score as you might. So hardest part of anything is actually starting the conversation, right? So here's just some tips from us, for the mindset as you go in. If you're gonna go and talk to someone about, hey, like, what do you think about working to boost each other's businesses? Well, like, there you go. This again should be win-win. You are a center of influence for them. They are one for you. The outcome should be beneficial all around. And steal some of our examples. COI marketing is working with the largest corporations in the country to little partnerships in neighborhoods. And then come with some ideas and, hey, steal some of these, right? Just to really provide some of those best-in-class customer experiences, because you want that consistent customer experience from someone working with you, or if they go to work with one of your COIs and vice versa. But also, like, get that. Might take someone a couple of conversations to see the win-win there. And just because they're not seeing the value in the partnership today doesn't mean that it's not worth a conversation over coffee in 3 months or so. when things shift a little bit. Jason, any tips from your personal experience that you would recommend?
Yeah, I'd just say take a small bite of how do you execute this. And I would say, who's that either number one group that you want to go after that you've never been able to actually get in the door with, or that group that seems to be feeding sporadically specific opportunities, leads, or new growth opportunities, and then create a quick little ecosystem leveraging the tools that you've already got. So I'm assuming majority of people on here, they've got some kind of agency management system. They have either some kind of CRM or marketing automation type tool, and they've got a website. So from my perspective, there is data that you pull from your agency management system to segment against a particular type of audience. There are campaigns that you can run to attract a particular group that you're going after where you're hoping to get referrals, and you keep building that message. You text them sometimes, you send them emails sometimes, and then you have your recurring phone calls as the opportunity progresses. And then having that very professional landing spot. And yeah, I've seen some agencies use social channels and they'll build around a particular niche audience. Most of them do it on websites, but the point is just those three components with one target. You can have that wrapped up in about 30 minutes, let it fly, and see what happens over the next 90 days. And then as you start to see business rolling in or your business book of business expanding because of your network effect, then you just go quickly ask people for feedback so that you can make sure that those decisions you made digitally and from the human side, because in the end, that's what drives the relationship, you know you're on the right track, or you might have to adjust. So that's like the quick 101 way to put this stuff that we're spouting into use. And so that's probably the way that I would identify it. Yeah, I'd love to jump into Q&A. I know we've got a slide with our upcoming webinars you probably want to show, Stephanie, and then we can answer some questions.
And when we do that, Jason, I love that you mentioned data as well, because through your AMS and through your marketing technology stack, you'll be able to see what you're getting out of these. And if someone really is kind of a stick in the mud later, you can say, no, but when I've done this before with, XYZ, look at how much we grew. So don't be scared of data. So definitely we'll get some good Q&A rolling in. Please keep those questions coming. We are continuing our fairly busy webinar schedule and would love to see all of you on any of these coming up. We're going to be doing a series on benchmarking, speaking of data. So that'll be about over 4 weeks through the month of February. So please join me, and we'll have a couple of special guests to kind of talk about measuring yourself, looking at the rest of the industry, and kind of helping you define success with your marketing. On 2/15, we'll be doing our monthly pit stop. So that's where we'll really kind of give you a sense of something specific about our products. And we'll be going through the Forge dashboard on that one. So as you're thinking about putting specific web pages out there, this is a way to understand how you'll be able to track those. And then on 2/21, we'll be doing demos with Dave, with our fantastic VP of Sales, the head of our growth team, Dave Morton. And he'll be doing some deep dives into some of our product features as well. Go to our, if you go to Agency Revolution, you'll be able to see upcoming events, agencyrevolution.com. You'll see our upcoming events page, and these will all be on there, or pull your phone out and scan the QR code now. So we do have our first question here, and this came in earlier from Jason, who asks, have you seen much success in joining? Oh, hi, Courtney. I'm so glad you could join us. Have you seen much success in joining local chambers and getting involved that way in discovering COIs? Jason says he's seen success with this, but it depends on the activity of the chamber for sure. My take is it depends on the activity of the chamber for sure. But Jason, what do you think?
The answer is yes, but it's the effort you put into it. My guess is, Jason, your specific question and the fact that you're saying you're seeing some success, you're putting in the effort. And that's why I actually intentionally ended with, here's a quick practical way to put some technology, some campaigns, and the human factor at work. And it is that type of, if you're part of a chamber of commerce and you're trying to go after particular niche commercial audiences, then you would sit in those meetings, participate, understand who the membership base is, and then look and start to segment where do I want to go after? I always use coffee shops because I'm a coffee freak. And if I were an insurance agency, that's one place on the commercial side. I think, I bet there are a lot of agencies that would say stay away from that particular line of business. But in my fantasy world, that'd be great because maybe I could get some discounts. But the point is that if you have a heavily populated chamber with coffee shops, then you would quickly know, I think I want to ensure that, and I've got the right carrier partners in the background. Now it's about what is your execution against that. We know handing out business cards and things like that are somewhat way of the past. It's more so when I walk away from this, will this person remember me, or how can I make them? And so honestly, applying about 5 minutes ago, what I was saying is a first step. And Jason, my guess is that you've probably nailed it from a segmentation and going after as much as you can in the Chamber of Commerce. That's when it's worth it. The problem with any networking group is the one, and we've all been part of them. We all go in, we sit in chairs or whatever we do, and we say who we are, our business, our value prop, and we think that that was the thing that is just going to get someone else to really refer and sell your business for you. We know that's not the case. And so you just have to have a bit of sophistication and automation so you can walk away and go do the next thing, or tend to those clients that take 80% of your time. So it's a long-winded way of saying, yes, it works when you obviously are measuring, monitoring, and applying some automation and a tactic against it. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the feedback. There was another question in here about the Cinch discussion, what Agency Revolution is doing. And it doesn't just apply to Cinch, but and just to build on that, there are groups within the jewelry space. When you think about insurance groups, we are continually finding pockets of where an agent or agents, because we've got a few thousand of them now, they give us feedback on a regular basis. And our agency customers will say, it'd be great if I were able to communicate this better, show this on my site, build something around this particular campaign. And then they will drop in, think about, guys, these lines are products. And some of those that rise to the top are things like jewelry insurance, because it makes sense. Or thinking about cyber policies and all these cyber partners, whether they're MGAs, wholesalers, or your carrier partners that already exist on the commercial line side. These are pieces or components that can obviously build out your existing book of business. And so to build on that question of, is Cinch it? Is that is one partner in a home warranty space, but we are continually building out for you opportunities to come in and say, well, I want to leverage on that partner and their content they built for me and push that in front of my customer base and share in that transaction or revenue. So there are plenty of centers of influence opportunities that are being created. And then you, as an agent in your community, or whether you operate regionally or nationally, that can also bring some of those opportunities in to your technology base and run with it.
Jason, we have one follow-up question on that just popped in, and that's sounds great, but like I don't know how to talk about those. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Sorry.
Like, I think in terms of Cinch and you mentioned jewelry. I think what the questioner is saying, like, what if you're not an expert on those things? You know, how do you get that content out to them?
So that's the whole point of building out these channels, is that the experts are those partners or companies that ultimately want to be your partner so that they can communicate to your customer base. No one should get that right until you're comfortable with that partnership. But what they lend is they will lend the content, the credibility, the expertise that then appends to the good work that you're doing as an insurance agent. So from our perspective at AR, that's building that out, having the right pockets of content that can distribute out through campaigns, and then ultimately get in front of your customer base. And then with you and your partner, you work on the details of, all right, I've got yet another one that, in the case of home warranty, wants one that's a home insurance customer. Yep. I see another one coming through around, you definitely need to work the chambers, become involved in the town. So this is good feedback from someone else. Become involved in the town you live in, let them get to know you, add them to your database, absolutely, and stay in touch so they know what
automation,
you do, maybe what you do and think of you all year round. I just did another presentation on retaining your existing client base, and my point was, you're thinking about retention when you're selling a new prospect, like we all are, because we're painting a picture of what that vision and what that experience will be like with the customer. So from that perspective, building on that comment, it's constantly being in front of them, whether you humanly are or not. And it's the same thing when you've got these financial advisors, realtors, mortgage companies, whatever your centers of influence are, they want to always be in the know. They want to have accountability, and there are certain things that you need to make sure that you're doing systematically in order to check that box for them.
And I think, really the crux of all of it is you're doing all these things, but you're continuing to provide that value, that that advisor relationship that you have with your clients, but kind of really working with centers of influence allows you to kind of take that to the next level where you really are you're ratcheting up that trust that they have in you and that belief that they have in you and how much they'll want to work with you. And it's a great retention strategy as well as kind of a connection strategy. Technology like a great website and some marketing automation and reputation management supports that. I
Well said.
know we are a little bit over. So Jason, I feel like what I just said is my wrap up. Anything that you would like to say to wrap it up?
Yes, ditto. Thank you everyone for attending today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks on another webinar. Have a great day, everybody.